Can you give me a description of the Sandhill crane versus a...
Unfortunately, I cannot. Thank you.
This week on Kentucky Afield, we went live on Facebook with a panel of experts to answer all of your non-game questions. And we're bringing you those answers right now. It's all next on Kentucky Afield.
Such a pretty fish.
Beautiful.
This pond is plumb loaded with frogs.
They're everywhere in here.
Yeah, this is a good fish right here. Really good fish.
Come here, girl. Yeah, boy. That's a big rabbit. Nice job. Yes! Yes! My first muskie. Mercy Leo!
Yeah, look at it. It's a keeper.
There it goes. Boom. Oh.
Wow, that happened fast.
Hello and welcome to Kentucky Afield. My name is Chad Miles, and tonight you have tuned in to one of my favorite shows of the year. That is the Kentucky Wild non-game call-in show. Now, due to COVID-19, tonight's show will be a little different than the past. We do not have a call center, so we will have to get them via Facebook. One thing that's not different is the panel of guests I have with me tonight. First off, I have Kate Slankard, avian biologist. And also a man who does not need an introduction, we have John McGregor, state herpetologist. Good to see you guys. Handling our props tonight, we have Jeff Roberts, who is a conservation educator here at the Salado Wildlife Education Center. We've got plenty of questions coming in, so we're going to get right to it. First off, we have Tom Timbrook, wants to know if it's true that snakes are on the move because of the abundance of cicadas.
There are some kinds of snakes that eat cicadas, namely copperheads, and they feed on the nymphs that come out of the ground and also the adults, and they eat annual cicadas. And July and August are the best times for the cicadas to emerge, so copperheads are hunting them at night. If you have a yard or an open grassy area with trees, you might have copperheads prowling around at night looking for the cicadas.
Now, this isn't our big cicada hatch that we sometimes have, but we have cicada hatches every single year in the state of Kentucky.
Right, they're called annual cicadas, and we have a number of different kinds, and they're here every summer.
Okay. All right, our next question is from Larry Mitchell. Wants to know if kingfishers are rare in Kentucky. He said he sometimes sees them on Clay WMA. Now, where's Clay WMA located?
It's up in sort of northeastern Kentucky, Nicholas County, I think.
Okay.
Kingfishers are actually pretty common in Kentucky. They occur statewide, and you can find them near creeks and small rivers. Not a terribly uncommon bird.
Okay. All right, we have Michelle. This is all going to be Facebook questions tonight, since the only way to ask a question is to log on and post the questions here on Facebook. Michelle, what kind of snake is Jeff holding, and where can they be found?
Okay, Jeff is holding a corn snake, or it's now called the red corn snake in the field guides. They are found in two areas in Kentucky. The Red River Gorge Natural Bridge area, they're really rare in that part of the state. And then from southern Hardin County down through Wax and on down to Mammoth Cave and Cave City and Park City in the Mammoth Cave region, they're pretty common in that part of the state. Still a lot of corn snakes there.
They're a really, really pretty snake, and I'd hate to know how many people have laid eyes on this snake. This snake is usually out at the Kentucky State Fair almost every single year, and so this snake has been seen a bunch, and it's a very docile snake.
People kill them because they think they're copperheads.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an orange, you know, it's not copper like a copperhead.
Yeah.
But orange, copper, whatever.
All right, next question is from Aaron Ferguson. Do you know about a pair of bald eagles in the Big Sandy near Catlettsburg, and how do we monitor our bald eagles? We actually did a show about this, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We monitor bald eagles statewide via a helicopter survey in March. Last year we counted 187 nests. I cannot think of a nest off the top of my head in the area she described, but it's not impossible that they're there. If she knows of a nest, maybe we don't know about it, she could give us a call. I actually have a map of the bald eagle nests in Kentucky right here. I don't know if you guys can zoom in on it. It basically shows that the birds are just doing great statewide. They occur almost in all the counties now, nesting statewide. Most of the big rivers and lakes have a nest on them now. They're just doing great.
So if someone does come upon a bald eagle's nest and they want to know if we need to know about it, how do they do that?
If they think we might not know about it, they can call our 1-800 number, 1-800-858-1549, and let me know about it.
Okay.
We also have some bald eagle props over here. I don't know if we want to go ahead and show those. We have a bald eagle skull that Jeff is holding right now. Shows just how, big the bird is. I don't know if you want to pick up that red-tailed hawk skull to show next to it.
Yeah, we think of a red-tailed hawk as being a really big bird of prey here in the state of Kentucky. And it is, but comparatively, it's
right.
Big
Bald
difference.
eagle's bigger, yeah. We've got a bald eagle egg, much bigger than a chicken egg. Got a red-tailed hawk egg for comparison.
And look at the feet that we have over there. Man, that is a big talon, huh?
Right. Yeah. Next, he's going to show the talons. That's a replica of some bald eagle talons. Just shows you how enormous those birds are.
So we see a bald eagle, and of course they're really big, and you see the size of the skull. But people might be shocked when they hear about how much a bald eagle would weigh. What would an adult bald eagle weigh? Anywhere
between 8 and 14 pounds. And yeah, I mean, their personality is bigger than they actually are. Their wingspan is huge. They have a 6-foot wingspan at least usually, but they don't weigh as much as you would think.
I mean, birds are designed to fly. When you see a bird with a 6-foot wingspan standing this tall, you'd think, man, that thing weighs 35 pounds.
Yeah,
no.
I hear that a lot. Yeah, they're lightweight. So.
Yeah. All right, next question here. We have a question from Joseph. Said he found a banded bird, and he wants to know what to do with it. And he said it was dead when he found it. So we don't know what kind of bird it was.
Okay, well that's something us bird researchers get really excited about as a band recovery, because we get to see where those birds we band end up. And I actually brought a bird band just to show you guys what it looks like. If you find a dead bird, or if you're out photographing birds and you notice they have a band on them, the numbers off these bands are just so valuable to us. We get to learn about where the birds go that we're studying. And so they usually have a website or a 1-800 number that you can call on them. If it's an older band, sometimes it can be hard to read that. You can always call us and we can help you make sure that the band is reported so that we can learn from it.
It's very cool. So there's a lot you can learn from this. Where it's located, potentially mortality of the bird.
How long it survived. We've recovered some bald eagle bands that, the eagles were over 20 years old. Lots of really neat things we can learn from those band recoveries.
Fantastic. Next question from Neil. What is the range of the rattlesnake and copperheads in the state of Kentucky? And are there any in Otter Creek Park? I'm going to guess Neil visits Otter Creek Park. He wants to know, does he need to watch out for snakes?
Otter Creek Park has lots of copperheads, maybe an occasional timber rattlesnake, but they're not common over there. I do have range maps for our venomous snakes. The copperhead is found statewide in Kentucky, everywhere in the state. We do have some counties in the bluegrass where we don't have any copperhead records. That doesn't mean they're not there. But I would be really surprised if someone found one in Bourbon County or Scott County, some of those other counties. Now, the timber rattlesnake has a really interesting distribution in the state. It's found everywhere except in the bluegrass.
What's your thoughts on why that's the case? Why not the bluegrass?
Nobody really knows. There are lots and lots of different small mammals, reptiles, amphibians, wildflowers that are not found in the bluegrass. They'll be found in other parts of the state, but this really looks funny when you look at a rattlesnake map.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, a rattlesnake shows up in the bluegrass that it's either been released by somebody or, maybe it's floated down the Kentucky River after a flood, something like that. But we have no actual rattlesnake populations here. And it probably has to do with the bedrock, which is Ordovician limestone. And there are certain trace elements in art here. And, you know, I mean, rattlesnakes eat, their main food is gray squirrels. There are lots of gray squirrels in the bluegrass, so it has nothing to do with food. It's, it's something else.
Huh.
If you don't like rattlesnakes, move to the bluegrass.
All right, next question is from Joe. What happens to snakes and reptiles when they do a prescribed burn? So if, you know, prescribed burns are a part of wildlife management. Biologists do it quite often. What happens to snakes when they're there in the prescribed burn?
You know, prescribed burns are really good for snakes because they they open up the habitat. They create really good small mammal and insect populations that a lot of snakes feed on. Now, some snakes get burned up in a prescribed burn, but not very many. They have places they go down into mammal burrows. Sometimes they can just outrun a fire. If our fires in Kentucky, you know, move pretty slowly. They just creep along the ground. But every once in a while, you cook a, you know, a black racer or a garter snake or something, or a box turtle. But by and large, you get there's more gain than loss for reptiles.
So prescribed birds are also good for maybe not the occasional one that gets caught up, but for the most part, it's good for snakes as well.
No, they're good for just about everything except maybe they're not too good for frogs, except crawfish frogs. You know?
Oh, yeah.
We even have frogs that do well in prescribed birds.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. All right, Matthew Lanham wants to know about armadillos. He said they're being seen on trail cameras near Logan and Todd counties, and he wants to know how they get here. Everyone, you know, we're getting a new species that's moved in the state of Kentucky, and everyone wants to know about armadillos. And tell me a little bit about your history of seeing armadillos here in the state of Kentucky.
Well, I've lived here since 1971. The first armadillo I ever saw in Kentucky was in 2002.
Okay.
And it was out in Mayfield on the Purchase Parkway. But prior to that, we had occasional records in the Jackson Purchase in far western Kentucky. But when we starting in about the 1990s, they showed up at Land Between the Lakes, and they started becoming fairly common out in western Kentucky. And they are now pretty much across most of western and southern Kentucky. And here I keep track of armadillo records whenever I can get people to report them to me. And we now have them as far east as Pike County and Knott County, McCreary County. They're showing up more and more in eastern Kentucky. And I think they follow the roads because the interstates and the parkways have mowed right-of-ways and lots of insects, and that's what armadillos like to do. They root around and eat grubs and insects. So they're moving east.
And they're moving pretty quickly too, because I remember when I started doing this show just 4 or 5 years ago, the range at that point in time seemed like it was more western Kentucky. If anyone called in and said they saw an armadillo from any state in the state of Kentucky or any county, it wouldn't probably surprise you that much at this point in time, would it?
No, but I'm interested in that stuff. I mean, our people see so many that they never tell me about them anymore.
Yeah.
So my map is like kind of behind. But, you know,
so they could be out. If you think you've seen one, there's a good chance you may have seen an armadillo on the road.
I have not seen any personally east of Interstate 65, but when I'm going to western Kentucky, I almost always see at least one on the WK Parkway.
Yeah. All right, next question here is from Dave Singleton. I'm not an avian biologist, so I think it's a scarlet
Tanager.
Tanager, all right, a scarlet tanager. He said he saw one 2 weeks ago in Owen County, and he wants to know how rare they are.
They are a forest bird, and so if you have a chunk of mature forest, you're likely to find them. Not necessarily rare, but it's always a really neat bird to see. They're beautiful and red, and just neat to see.
That's cool. J.P. Jenkins says he has a red-tailed hawk that's living on his property, and he said quite often he finds feathers in his field, and he wants to know if he can collect them and keep them.
Well, he actually can't. It's against federal law to possess bird feathers, and that was put into place to protect the birds. You know, they didn't know if you were illegally taking birds or not, and so the rule is that you can't have you cannot possess bird feathers unless it's a game species.
Gotcha. Okay, so let them lay, huh?
Yeah, yep.
We're getting a ton of questions via Facebook about some species that are not considered non-game. They are game species. And our info center would love to take those calls. Please reach out to us at 1-800-858-1549. And any of the questions regarding bear, deer, turkey, any of the animals or fish species that we pursue here in the state of Kentucky, call that info center. They'd love to answer your questions. Next one here is from Toby Walker. Wants to know if whippoorwills are in decline. We get this question quite a bit, and if so, why the case is.
Yeah, we do think there's a decline in whippoorwills. We don't fully understand it yet. There's a thought that it may be habitat related, and especially related to invasive plants like bush honeysuckle that's in the understory of a lot of forests now where it didn't used to be. We think that might be affecting nightjars and whippoorwills in general. We have a survey for them statewide, and we find that they're doing really well in big tracts of forest that are on public lands. And so we think maybe the declines are more so on private lands.
Yeah. Well, any thoughts on what that could be? I mean,
you know, like I said, the habitat thing makes sense to me. Really, we need to study it more to be sure.
Yeah. I know some people write out or call me and they have their reasons for thinking, which fits your public land, and they're saying they think feral cats may have something to do with it. We don't really know.
Could be, you know, because you do find them more on private lands, and these birds do nest on the ground, and so they're vulnerable to ground predators.
Yeah. Well, I live in the northern part of the state, and I don't hear a whole lot of them there. But I tell you what, when I go to the southern part of the state, especially night fishing, spending the evening on the deck of the bass boat, we're hearing quite a few down that way.
Yeah.
You go to Lake Cumberland, Dale Hollow, even Kentucky Lake and areas like that, you listen, you're going to hear them. They're
There's
out.
Definitely some good hot spots still out there of them.
Our next question is from Harold Scott. He wants to know, how big is the Kentucky scorpion population and what kind are they? And I know, John, you have talked about this in the past. It's something that you like to study.
Yeah, we have two different kinds of scorpions. There's one species, a little bitty brown scorpion, that the textbook calls the southern unstriped scorpion, and the UK entomology site calls the southern devil scorpion. And it is very common from like Berea College Forest south to Cumberland Falls and all the way west to the Mammoth Cave area and north up to Fort Knox. It's not in the bluegrass, but it's in the knobs and Mississippian Plateau, and it's really common. You find them in dry, rocky areas where the sun just beats down, and you lift up rocks and they're on the underside of the rock, and so you kind of have to be careful. They sting, but the sting is not anything major. It's about like less than a paper wasp.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
I've been stung several times, and it's kind of irritating because it means you didn't watch where you put your hands. But the good thing about them is they eat wasps. So,
Oh, they do?
Yeah. Anything that eats wasps is my friend. Yeah. And we have another species of scorpion that's out at Land Between the Lakes. And I don't know much about that other kind. It's bigger. I've never found one. But I guess they show up under loose bark on dead trees. And I've looked for them, just haven't been able to find one.
Okay, okay. And they've been around forever? They're just native species?
You know, we don't really know. I had never heard of them until the last 10 years or so.
Okay, okay.
The biologists out at Murray State are familiar with it. So.
Okay, all right. Philip Williams wants to know if we have any golden eagles nesting here in Kentucky. It's an interesting question because a couple months ago we were getting a bunch of calls from a pair that came down, right, from northern...
Well, so we do not have any nesting in Kentucky. We've actually never had a nest documented in Kentucky.
Okay.
There is a pair that's being tracked that actually nests up in Canada, and they spend the winter in Kentucky. We do have several golden eagles reported in the winter every year in Kentucky. And so that pair you're talking about, it's actually a Canadian pair that's overwintering here in Kentucky.
And I think they have a website that tracks their path and how. And I think, did they go at Bernheim Forest? Is that where they end up?
It's at Bernheim, yeah, that's tracking them.
And that was pretty interesting because you see how they make their trip down, and they both end up at the same place, but they didn't take the same path to get here.
Right. Yes.
It's a really cool situation. But no nesting pairs, never documented
never
nesting
have
pairs.
been. Yeah, just lots and lots of bald eagles. Yep.
So the size difference, what is the size difference between a golden eagle and a bald eagle?
There's really not much. Golden eagles are just a little bit bigger wingspan, but honestly, when you see them on the wing, I don't see a difference in size. So,
Very similar then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Bobby Howard wants to know if there's any whooping crane sightings in Kentucky.
Whooping cranes do migrate through Kentucky, and you know, their population is small, so it's very small numbers. But usually, every you know, fall or so, we hear about that. A few whooping cranes passing through the state.
All right. All right. We have Andy wants to know if KDFWR can determine if an endangered bat species is in a cave on his property. I assume that he has a cave that has some bats, and he's wanting to know if they're endangered.
Yeah, you know, Kentucky has, I don't know how many thousand caves, 10,000, 15,000 caves, and only a few caves have endangered bats in. The conditions have to be just right, and it's usually going to be either they're there in the wintertime hibernating, or they're there in the summertime raising young. So you really have to look at each individual cave. It's not anything that we don't have teams that go around and try to check every cave in the state. But if he sees a lot of bats in his cave, and I'm talking hundreds to thousands, if he would get in touch with the department, you know, we will get somebody out there and take a look. But most caves do not have endangered.
Okay. The next question here is from Bob Mead. He wants to know what the department's status is on black vultures. We get this quite a bit. He's heard that black vultures can be aggressive.
Yeah. So black vultures used to be uncommon in Kentucky, but over the past 20 or 30 years, they've become very common. Black vultures are more aggressive than turkey vultures, and so our reports of problems with vultures in the state have increased since the black vulture has increased. And so I don't really know how to explain a stance on him. If he is having trouble with black vultures, we have a website that provides information on that. He's welcome to call me, and I'll walk him through the options. I'm not sure what kind of trouble he might be having, but we've helped to develop a lot of solutions for folks that are having trouble with black vultures, and so there's probably some help for whatever issue he might be having.
No, black vultures, is that a species that is federally protected?
It is federally protected, but if folks are having trouble, there is a permit system where they can seek a permit to take vultures if necessary.
Okay,
so.
all right. All right, Megan Alessi, what is the difference between a broadhead skink and a 5-line skink?
They are very similar. Broad-headed skinks get larger. A full-grown broad-headed skink can get 10 or 11 inches long. A full-grown 5-line skink is about 7 inches long. It's really hard to tell them apart. The babies of both have blue tails. The breeding males of both have red heads. The way I tell them apart is by size, or you can actually count the scales on the head if you can get a good enough photograph, and you can separate them that way.
Okay, so very, very, very similar species.
Yeah, they're very similar.
Okay. Mark Simon wants to know if there are rattlesnakes in the Red River Gorge region. Well, you showed us our map, and
there are lots of rattlesnakes in the Red River Gorge.
That'd be a good place if you wanted to see one to go, huh?
Yeah. The trails up on the ridges are probably the best opportunity to see a rattlesnake.
Okay.
But most people will never see one. The rattlesnakes spend most of their time just coiled up in the leaf litter, and they blend in perfect.
Yeah.
And they will not move a muscle. You can step right beside one, and the most you get out of them is a tongue flicker, you know? So,
you are creating some chills for some of those people out there that don't like snakes and think that they potentially have stepped right by them.
Yeah.
Chances are you have, and honestly, unless you step right on one, they can be
Temper
pretty hard.
rattlesnakes are not aggressive. They're pretty calm. The only fatalities from snake bite I've ever been able to document in the state were from timber rattlesnakes being handled in snake handling churches.
Yeah.
And we've had at least 7 of those since 1960. But as far as I know, no one in the last 50 years has been bitten by a rattlesnake that they accidentally stepped on.
And yeah, okay, that's good to know. Kristen said she found a small gray snake that was about 10 inches long. Wants to know what type of snake that could be.
There are several. Could be a brown snake, an earth snake, a red-bellied snake, a worm snake. If it's dark gray, it could be a ringneck snake. We have a half dozen small, grayish-looking snakes that most people never see.
Okay.
Take a picture and send it to me, and I'll tell you what it is.
All right. All right. Michael wants to know what type of eagles are at Green River Lake. He's not saying nesting. He's just saying what type of eagles. So
It's probably bald eagles. You know, we probably have at least 50 bald eagles to every one golden eagle we have, even in the wintertime. So that'd be my guess. And bald eagles, when they're younger, are brown throughout. They don't have their white head and white tail yet, so they're often confused with golden eagles at that time.
But they could be full grown. They could. I mean, they
Oh,
are full
absolutely.
grown. So
They are,
they're a big bird, even though they don't have the white.
Right.
It could be confusing for someone who sees a big eagle and says, "What kind of eagle is that? It's full grown, but it doesn't have a white head."
Right, and they go through a series of plumages in their first 5 years that all can be very confusing, but you can look on the internet and at these aging guides, and you can even get good at aging bald eagles just based on where you see the white patches on them. So
So the white head and the white tail feathers. At what age do they come on?
5 years old.
5 years old. But
that-
and a bald eagle, as far as its size, its full height, how quick does that happen?
It's fully grown at 3 months old. So
So
yeah.
it spends a lot of time without a white head.
Right, exactly.
All right, we have Dave Scudder. How do you keep skunks away? Been smelling a lot of skunks lately. I guess he wants to know how he's going to keep his skunks away. He wants to answer that.
Good luck. The best thing you can do, I guess, is trap them and take them a long ways away and release them. Because skunks are very, very common, especially in the bluegrass region where there's lots of farmland. You know, they eat rodents, they eat insects, they eat corn, they eat anything. So
A lot of times they come to pet food, so it's good to keep the pet food inside the house.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But
Jason Skaggs, when should you stop feeding hummingbirds before the winter migration?
you actually don't have to stop feeding them. I usually take my feeder in around the end of September because most of the hummingbirds are gone at that point. But the hummingbirds will not stay over winter just because you still have your feeder out. So you can just take it down whenever the birds stop showing up.
Okay. All right. Next question, Pam. Where is the best place in Kentucky to see bald eagles? Well, we had your map out there. They're kind of spread throughout the state. But if you said, you know what, I want to go and have my best chance of seeing one, where would you tell a person to go?
If you want a guaranteed great look at bald eagles, I would go to one of the Eagle Weekends out at the Land Between the Lakes parks in winter. They happen every January and February at Lake Barkley, Ken Lake, and Kentucky Dam Village State Resort Parks. It's a great event if you like birds. You get to go out on this big boat and tour the lake and see usually anywhere between 20 and 70 bald eagles in one trip. So
Wow, that's
it's
a great place.
way to see them. And you can just Google it and find out how to buy a ticket for next year.
Pretty guaranteed, huh? You're going to
it's-
see a bald
You'll
eagle.
see one.
All right, next question is from Dwayne. Why is it bad to put red liquid in a hummingbird feeder?
It's actually been found that dye can cause the hummingbirds to get sick. There's a number of, different ways that might affect them, but it's better to just give them clear sugar water. You can mix 1 part sugar to 4 parts water, and all you need is just a little bit of red on the hummingbird feeder to attract the birds. You can even tie a little piece of red flagging on the hummingbird feeder, and that'll be enough to attract the birds. The liquid doesn't have to be red.
Okay, all right. Bob Howard wants to know if rattlesnakes are protected.
they are, well, no. That's the short answer. You're allowed to catch and keep up to 5 timber rattlesnakes for personal use. You can kill one if it's like on your property or something. So in Kentucky, they are not protected. But you're not allowed to sell a rattlesnake or a rattlesnake skin or a rattlesnake rattle or any. They are protected wildlife, just like all other wildlife is protected.
So you're not allowed to
So-
sell animal parts, including rattlesnakes.
Right, you can't sell the rattlesnakes or any of their parts, but you're allowed to keep one in captivity, or if one is on your property and makes you uncomfortable, it's not against the law to kill it. Now, in some states like Ohio, the timber rattlesnake is endangered and you can actually be prosecuted for killing
So you want to make sure you're not going across state lines
Yeah,
and carrying.
if you go into another state, you might want to check on whether rattlesnakes are protected. You know, Kentucky, West Virginia, they are not protected. Tennessee, all reptiles are protected.
Margaret says she has a house finch coming to her feeder that looks like it may have something wrong with it. And what could be done and what should she do?
Okay. The house finch probably has something we call house finch eye disease or mycoplasma, and it affects their eyes. It can cause them to go blind and actually die. And this is common throughout the state, especially in late summer. And so the best thing to do is when you notice it is you want to take your feeder down, bleach it off really good, and leave it down for 2 weeks. The disease is spread on common feeding surfaces, so you don't want to contribute to the spread of the disease, and by leaving it down for 2 weeks, unfortunately, the bird that's affected will probably die, and you won't be contributing to that spread.
So not much can be done as far as that for that particular bird, though, right? You're saying?
Not for that bird,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Okay. Todd, what is the difference between an alligator snapping turtle and a common snapping turtle?
The two are fairly similar up to a point. The young ones of both species have those 3 ridges on the back, but the alligator snapper gets much larger, you know, up to well over 100 pounds. It has a really sharply hooked beak. Probably the easiest way to tell them apart is you look straight down on the head. An alligator snapper's head is concave, and if you're looking straight down on him, you can't see his eyes. A common snapper's eyes are kind of on the side of the head, and you can look down and see them. And a common snapper will strike at you and has a big, thick, pink tongue like a human tongue. An alligator snapper just holds its mouth open, and it has a black tongue with a little pink worm-like thing on it that it uses as a lure. So the mouth and the tongue, they're much different.
Okay. All right. James, he said he heard someone talking about a red eft. What is a red eft? E-F-T.
E-F-E.
A red eft is it's a type of salamander.
Okay.
It's a land stage of the red-spotted newt, and the newt is that the green aquatic salamander that lives in a lot of ponds. But when a newt is a teenager, it wanders around in the woods, and it's a red eft. It kind of goes through a developmental stage, kind of its teenage period, and it lives on land, and then when it finally reaches maturity, it goes into the water.
Okay.
But some newts actually leave the water every year and revert to their teenage ways and wander around in the woods, just like some of us do.
Yeah. It sounds familiar.
Some of us never outgrew catching snakes when we were little kids, and we revert to it every summer.
The next question is from Joseph, and this is a great question. It says, what is the best field guide in Kentucky to reference snakes and birds? We'll start with snakes because I'll tell you what, I get this question about, hey, what kind of snake is this? And I can always go and reference that Snakes of Kentucky book that's got great pictures. And tell me a little bit about that book and where it can be located.
Okay, we have, it's a free book. You can download it online, just do a Google search on Kentucky snakes, and it's a 32-page book with color photos and range maps, and it's pretty good. It has all the Kentucky snakes in it. We are working on, slowly but surely, finishing a big hardcover book on amphibians and reptiles of Kentucky. But the Kentucky snakes book is good. The field guide to reptiles and amphibians is pretty good.
Okay.
But, you know, between the two of them, you can identify snakes or take a picture of it and send it to me.
Okay. Yeah, I use that Kentucky Snakes book quite often because it's
pretty good.
It's got great pictures, and it's not, you can thumb through it pretty quickly and find what snake you're looking
Bill
for.
Moore wrote that in the early 2000s, and the photography is excellent because it's all my photos.
Okay.
And the artwork is excellent because it's all Rick Hill's.
Oh, so the department had a big hand in that.
The department did the whole thing.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And how about birds? So if someone wanted to say, hey, I want to get into birding here in the state of Kentucky, where do I get started with a good field guide?
Well, there's a lot of good nationwide field guides. If you're talking about specific books to Kentucky, the Kentucky Breeding Bird Atlas is a good book that gives you range maps of all the breeding birds in the state. It was done in the 90s. And then there's an annotated checklist to the birds of Kentucky, and that has all the birds, even the wintering birds. It gives you some hot spots of where to look for them and what time of year to expect to see them. And so I'd say those are essential guides if you're into birds in Kentucky.
All right, there you go. That's the books you need. Next question from Mary. She said a sandhill crane has been in her friend's yard all summer and wants to know, is this bird going to migrate?
Well, that's very unusual. I actually don't handle cranes. Our waterfowl program does, but I would call and tell them about that because that's just a very unusual thing. I do kind of wonder if maybe she's seeing a great blue heron or something else, but if she's sure it's a sandhill crane, then maybe give the info center a call.
Especially if you have a pond or some water areas around, having great blue herons is extremely common.
Much more likely,
A
yeah.
sandhill crane, that would not be real common.
Right.
All right. Charlie, do you recommend feeding birds like cardinals and finches throughout the summer?
You can. You certainly aren't doing any harm, and you're bringing the birds out where you can appreciate them.
Yeah.
Black oil sunflower seed, I think, is a good food for summertime.
What
Year-round,
was it
really.
again?
Black oil sunflower seed
Okay.
is a good value, I think, good bang for your buck to
Okay.
attract things like cardinals and finches.
Okay. Will Baker, the next question, wants to know if a sandhill crane is the same as a blue heron. So this kind of relates back to the question
okay.
we just had. And tell us about the difference between the blue heron and the sandhill crane.
Well, yeah, they are two different things. Great blue herons are much more common. We have them here year-round. They nest in the state. Sandhill cranes migrate through our state. They nest up north. Just two totally different birds, both really big, long-necked birds. I don't know how to describe the difference in appearance, really.
Vocally, they're so different. Can you give me a description of the sandhill crane versus a...
Unfortunately, I cannot. Thank you, though, for
But
asking.
if you're seeing a bird and you're thinking, man, that's a crane species, and what is that? If you hear one, they're very different, aren't they?
Right. Cranes you generally see in large numbers migrating together, hundreds of them at a time. Great blue herons you'll see, by themselves, hunting, nesting. They do nest in big groups, but they can also be off by their own, on their own hunting. So.
Yeah. I could have swore you were going to give me a blue heron sound. All right, and the next question here is from Billy. How do bats catch their food in the dark? We've all talked about this since little kids. Let's tell me a little bit about how they do that.
It's called echolocation, and they send out sound waves, and the sound bounces back, and it tells the bat how big the bug is, how fast it's moving, what direction it's moving, and sometimes even what kind of bug it is. And then the bat just zeroes in on it. It's like sonar. It's a really neat way for bats to feed, and then they catch the insects and maybe cup it in a wing or the tail membrane, sometimes in the mouth, but they usually use the mouth to make the sounds, and then the ears pick up the reflections. It's a very sophisticated way to catch food. And a bat can fly through a room with strings hanging down and not touch a single one. I mean, they're amazing.
They really are amazing.
They do it all without vision, but they can see.
Yeah.
They can see real well. They just don't, at night it doesn't do them any good.
Yeah. If their other senses is so much keener that they don't rely on their vision as much, huh?
Right.
That's pretty cool. Hey, here's a good question. Sally, we had a question earlier about books about snakes and birds. Sally wants to go past the book. She wants to know about apps. Are there any wildlife or plant ID smartphone apps that you'd recommend? Any that you use, any apps on your phone for locating plant species, any of that type of thing?
I would recommend iNaturalist. It has made really great strides recently, and you can take a picture of something and start asking iNaturalist what it is, and a lot of times it just pops up before you finish the question.
Really?
Now it may be wrong, but
but you're getting a question.
yeah, but it's
Is there something like that for wildlife as well?
iNaturalist will work for
Plants,
just
animals,
about
all
anything.
of
Yeah.
Okay.
Insects, mushrooms, plants.
iNaturalist. So you wouldn't go out and start eating mushrooms based on what this recommendation is?
I would not go around eating mushrooms unless I were an expert on mushroom identification.
So
there are too many that can make you run to the bathroom and not make it fun.
All right, next question is from Eddie. Are there cottonmouths in Kentucky?
Yes, there are.
Yeah.
I get a lot of cottonmouth comments, and I want to show people, if you walk up on a cottonmouth, and they're only found in western Kentucky, like west of Owensboro, a cottonmouth will throw that mouth open and just aim it at you. And no, you can walk around him, and he just follows you with that mouth.
Yeah.
They don't usually strike.
Yeah.
It's more of a bluff than anything else, but it's very distinctive. And, you know, if a snake doesn't do that, it's probably not a cottonmouth.
And how close do you have to get to that snake before it starts doing that?
It depends on the cottonmouth, but if Kate's foot was a cottonmouth and I went like this, it would throw that mouth open.
So you don't have to get within striking distance where it can get you. If you get within
no.
where you're moving and you got great line of sight and you're 10, 12 feet, there's a good chance they're going to open up.
People are not often bitten by a cottonmouth. I used to run around with Duke Wilder. He's passed away now, but he was a professor at Murray State, and he studied cottonmouths at Murphy's Pond. And I would never do what he did, but he would, just to demonstrate how mild-mannered they are, he would put his boot on a cottonmouth and roll it around with his boot. The snake would just go. I mean, it was.
Yeah.
I said, dude, I'm just never going to do that.
You don't want to find that snake on a bad day. We'll just let them go.
I'm not saying they don't bite, but
yeah.
they're only found in the western coalfield and the Jackson Purchase in western Kentucky.
All right. Stacy has a question about a really cool animal species, and that's a hellbender. She wants to know if it's a fish or a reptile.
The answer is neither one. It's a salamander. It's an amphibian. Hellbenders, we have some here at the Salado Center. They get 24 to 30 inches long. They're brown. They've got flaps of skin hanging off them on the sides. They live in under big rocks in pretty good quality water, and they're in rivers and large streams. They never leave the water. So their biologists can never find them. I mean, I've found 3 of them in my life on my own. It takes a whole crew of people to lift up those big rocks and look for them. The fishermen catch them.
Yeah.
We have an ad in our fishing guide every year, and I get 6 or 8 photos of hellbenders every year from Kentucky River, Salt River, Green River, you know, all across the state. And we actually have a hellbender study going on right now with eDNA, where you take water samples, and if there are hellbenders in that stream, it'll pick up DNA from their slime, and then you know that they're there. So,
you know, I noticed everyone here today is wearing their Kentucky Wild shirts, saying that they support wildlife. Speaking with some people at Kentucky Wild, they were saying that there is a study going on with hellbenders, and you just mentioned a portion of it. But they're also trying to improve some nesting locations to find some hellbenders. Is that correct?
One of the things that's working in some areas is you can actually build a concrete box with a hole on the downstream end, and that's the kind of thing that hellbenders naturally lay eggs under. Is a natural large rock with a cavity underneath it. And so we are trying to mimic natural nesting sites.
You know,
I don't know whether we need to do that or not. It'll be really interesting. But it's kind of like, you know, when you lay out 10 for snakes. I mean, the snakes are there, but when you lay out the 10, it makes it a whole lot easier to find them.
Yeah,
So,
I've never seen a hellbender in the wild. Now we have another salamander in Kentucky as well that's kind of similar, pretty big, right? What other type of water?
yeah, the other one's a mud puppy.
Mud puppy.
Fishermen call both of them water dogs. A mud puppy, a real big one's 18 inches long, and they have bushy red gills. A hellbender doesn't have the gills.
Okay, so that's how you can tell the difference.
That's how you tell the difference. And a mud puppy has nice tight skin. It doesn't have all those folds and flaps.
I would love to see one in the wild. And are they pretty much completely harmless?
Oh yeah, you mean hellbenders?
Yeah, you get a name like a hellbender, you're expecting something bad, but
You know, when I took vertebrate zoology in college, and my professor got one out of the jar, you know, and he said, "This creature is called a hellbender." He said, "Probably because," and then he starts bending it back and forth because it bends like hell.
oh yeah.
That was Dr. Price, you know. I thought he was great.
That's
But
great.
I was hooked on Hellbenders, just from that.
They are very cool. Like I said, I have seen them, but never in the wild.
And they can bite.
They can? Well,
Yeah.
they obviously eat.
Yeah, they eat crayfish and that sort of.
Next question is from Jeff Perkins. What Kentucky waters have jellyfish in them? And he said he's pretty sure he saw them in Laurel Lake.
Laurel Lake, a lot of our deeper, clearer lakes have freshwater jellyfish. And if you're out fishing at night, often you can shine a light down in the water and see them. Sometimes you even see them during the day. And they're fairly common.
I've definitely seen them before on some waters as well, so they are very common.
Yeah, they have a really complex life cycle, and part of the year they're just kind of a blob on a stick, and then.
So are most of them the same type of jellyfish, or do we have multiple species?
We probably just have one species.
Okay. Next question is from Fallon. He said, are great white egrets normally found in Kentucky?
They are. They actually nest here, not in huge numbers, but you can find them out in western Kentucky, like in Henderson County near Sloughs Wildlife Management Area, and out near Land Between the Lakes.
Okay. Next question is from Mark. He saw your Kentucky Wild T-shirts that you three of you are wearing, and he wants to know how he gets one of those. Any of you guys know how you get a Kentucky Wild T-shirt?
Well, it's a membership program, so you can purchase a membership online. I'm forgetting at the moment which level you get the T-shirt at, but it explains on the website. And I don't know if we haven't explained yet what Kentucky Wild is. Do you think we should talk about it? So the money from that membership actually supports our non-game wildlife programs, things like the Hellbender huts and some songbird survey work and equipment that we need for the mussel hatchery, all of our different non-game wildlife programs.
And you can go to fw.ky.gov/Kentucky Wild, KY Wild, and get more information on that. I have one of these shirts. They look great, and they're super soft, too.
They are. They're very comfortable.
The material on them they're very soft. So, yeah, we definitely appreciate you checking that out, and thanks for asking that question. Jeff, how many poisonous spiders do we have in Kentucky, and how can you keep them out of the house?
He won't want to hear my answer. All spiders are poisonous, even daddy longlegs.
Oh, yeah.
But mostly it's mildly poisonous and it doesn't affect people. The ones you worry about are the brown recluse spider and the black widow. And brown recluses are very common in Kentucky. They live in every building I have ever worked in. And I taught school, I've worked for the Forest Service, I've worked at Fish and Wildlife. They were in every building I was ever in college. So they're very common, and you just kind of have to watch where you put your hands. Now black widows are also very common in Kentucky. They are usually they're under rocks, or if you leave your lawnmower out in the backyard for a couple of weeks, and you lift it up and look underneath it, you will probably have a black widow. They're very common under the eaves of houses, in wood piles. They're mostly outdoors. Sometimes you see one in a barn. You just can't be worried about spiders. I mean, we've got enough to worry about without.
I mean, the spiders we're talking about, the only way you're ever going to end up getting bit by a spider, most likely, is you put your foot into a chute that's got him in, you roll over in the sheets with a spider where he happens to be in there. Spiders don't seek you out to bite you, do they?
No, they don't.
How do you keep them out of the house?
There's really no way to keep them out of the house. Just keep everything picked up. And actually, those sticky traps will catch most spiders, including even brown recluses.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, go to the dime store and get those little glue traps and set them along the walls. But you might not want to know what lives in your house. They'll catch snakes, all kinds of roaches, everything.
Jeremiah Folk wanted us to say that Mr. John McGregor is a legend. John, you've been studying a lot of things here in the state of Kentucky, and I tell you what, people ask me all the time when I'm going to have you back on the show. So people really enjoy the knowledge that you bring to the show. So thank you. You have a fan out here. So
I appreciate it.
Andy, he said his son had a lesson about birds in flight and their adaptations. Do they have hollow bones?
Yeah, they do. That helps to keep them lightweight so they can fly.
Fantastic. And we talked about earlier how a bird can look like it weighs 30 pounds, and you really pick one up, you're like, wow, this thing is really, really super light.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it is the hollow bones. So.
Last year, the year before, we were out doing a cave study with a bat biologist here for the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and you put a bat in your hand, and they're so light you almost don't know you're holding anything. They weigh so little. Next question here is Jacob wants to know where this is being filmed. Well, Jacob, we are at the Salado Wildlife Education Center here on the campus of the Department of Fish and Wildlife. It's a fantastic facility. If you have kids or no kids, this is a place to come to learn about all of our wildlife species here in the state of Kentucky. And they're not open on Sundays or Mondays, but other than that, they're open most of the year, but make sure you go check and log on. Everything has got new restrictions with COVID-19, so log on or make a phone call to us and come up here and check out the Salado Wildlife Education Center. John, why do crawdads live in holes?
What a question. Some crawdads are primary burrowers, and they only live in holes. And others are secondary burrowers, and they will dig a hole when the stream goes dry, and they dig down to the water line. And they bring the soil up in little pellets, and they pile it up. But crawdads need to have their gills wet in order to survive, and so those burrows go down to the water line. It's humid down there during the day, and then they come out at night when it's humid everywhere, and they hunt around for worms and vegetation or whatever they eat.
Quite often for this show, we've had Monty McGregor on here, and he's sometimes brought some crayfish, and then some of these build pretty good size. I think they call them chimneys. Is that right?
Chimneys. I've seen crayfish chimneys this high.
Yeah, pretty amazing that I think all those crayfish and ants, and to build these big structures, it blows me away and how they have to move things around with their claws and carrying things in their mouth or however they do it. It's pretty amazing. And
that washes away. Just think how year after year, some of those burrow networks are pretty impressive.
Fantastic. Jason, there is an owl that keeps trying to carry off his French bulldog. What can he do about it? That's a pretty aggressive owl.
That's a big dog. Well, so if you're nervous about an owl around your dog, the best thing to do is just to escort your dog out at night. You can certainly go out with it, make loud noises, scare the owl away. The bird is protected, so there's not a whole lot else you can do. We don't have a lot of problems with owls taking dogs in Kentucky, and so I wouldn't worry too much about it, but if he is worried, then just go out with the dog.
Do you get reports ever of people losing their dogs to owls? I mean, is that something that you've ever heard?
No, maybe a small kitten every once in a while, but
okay.
Yeah.
So it's probably not that big of an issue.
Yeah.
Next question, David. What kind of owl has a white face that lives in a barn? We've talked about these before.
Well, it's probably a barn owl, and that's a species we're very interested in. It's a rare bird in the state, and so we're trying to keep track of where they are. I'd appreciate it if you could give me a call and let me know more about it. We're just trying to learn about where they're at, where they're doing well, and what we can do to help them.
We've actually talked about this before. We're doing a study. So how do they reach you if they do think they have a barn owl?
They can call the 1-800 number, 1-800-858-1549, and just ask for Kate the Owl Lady, and they'll forward it to me.
And typically you'll give them a list of ways to tell if it is a barn owl, and it's different castings that they have and sounds they make. And
yeah, we'll talk about it, and if it is a barn owl, we may even come out and take a look and see what we can do to help. So.
All right. We have last question here is from Jeff. He said he saw a Kentucky Afield segment about falcons in the Louisville area, and he wants to know if this project is still going on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's still going on. We currently have about 16 nesting pairs of falcons in Kentucky. Most of them are along the Ohio River. Louisville has a lot, but they go over to Maysville on the Ohio River. We have a lot of them in nest boxes that we installed for them. Some are on natural cliffs now, which is great. So yeah, we still have that project going strong and probably will for several more years. So
fantastic. Well, hey, I want to thank you for tuning in tonight via Facebook to Kentucky Afield. I learned a little bit tonight. I hope you did too. And if you have any more questions, please reach out to us at 1-800-858-1549, or even better yet, visit the Salado Wildlife Education Center here in Frankfort. We have a ton of things to see, all kinds of species, both game and non-game and fish species that can be studied and learned about right here at the Salado Wildlife Education Center. Hey, Kentucky Afield is going to be preempted and off air for the next 2 weeks, but make sure you join us on September the 12th. That will be our live call-in show for fall hunting. So several seasons are going to open up between now and then. We should have plenty to talk about. Join us then, and thank you for watching Kentucky Afield.